Jonty, first of all, what would you like to say about the wonderful camp organized by Parag?
Well, it's been 24 hours. It's our second session.
Yeah.
We had a very brief session under lights last night. I flew up from Chennai, and it's been fantastic. You know, I think cricket for me has always been something that I'm passionate about, and the growth of cricket in India is phenomenal. But it doesn't just happen. It requires commitment. It requires obviously space, and the commitment comes from the parents, the children, but most importantly, the academy owners and the facilitators. Because without that, you know, cricket is a team game. And it's not just on the field that the team is important. It's off the field where the team is really, without a teamwork happening, it's not going to function. And cricket in India is going to be very sporadic all over the place. So it's great to see in an area like this in Pune where there's, you know, I've seen now in the space of 24 hours, Parag has taken me to 2 different facilities. And it's fantastic that in such a built-up area that you can have these green areas where kids can practice and play cricket, because it's not just about playing cricket, it's about the movement too. Because if children have the option of being indoors and watching a screen, now there's no excuse. Parag and his team are making sure they get out and they move. And from a health point of view, it's even more important than just the cricket skills that they're learning.
Jonty, you know, that Gabba run out of 1992. Before that, you know, if you say most of people were aware of 2 aspects of cricket, batting and bowling. Do you think that run out of what you dismissal you did of Inzamam Haq changed the fielding and perhaps the changing moment of your career?
Well, it certainly launched, that 1992 World Cup launched my career. So I'm always grateful to Inzi for turning and not being the best runner. In fact, the reason I had to dive was he got back sooner than I had anticipated. So he was still moving quite well as a 19-year-old boy. But the interesting thing is that was 1992. So people were talking about fielding because at that World Cup, there was an awareness, but it was only once the IPL started that teams started employing fielding coaches that people realized that yes, it can actually win you games in a limited overs version. But the key for me now is that if you're playing in a test match against India, you don't want to give Virat Kohli a second chance. So fielding is just as important in T20. The intensity is slightly different in the T20 game, but it's crazy because 1992 until 2008 was the first IPL. People were still talking about fielding. And it was only since then, and I think what also changed was that bringing international coaches, bringing international players. So suddenly the Indian players couldn't get left out or left behind because there were 7 Indians and 4 overseas. You had to have your Indian players fielding well. So the emphasis only changed from, I think, the IPL 2008. So while I dived onto the scene in 1992, it took a long time for there to be an acceptance that this is an important part of the game.
Jonty, since the time you have played cricket and after you retired, who do you think is the, or I would say top 3 fielders comes to your mind? And
difficult to sort of include or exclude. Herschel Gibbs, I had the fortune of playing alongside, so myself at backward point, Herschel and covers. There weren't too many easy singles around for the opposition. He was a brilliant mover, good rugby player, so good ball skills. So Herschel was phenomenal. Ricky Ponting as a fielder was just fantastic. I think the first all-round fielder was the late Andrew Simons because he was a big guy, but he would field under the helmet at Silly Point, he would field in the circle and he would dive around, and then obviously from the boundary he had real power, good safe hands. So he was the first complete cricketer. Then you had guys like Martin Guptill who came around, Jadeja. I was always a massive fan of Suresh Raina. I mean, he spent more time in the circle, but he would just dive for everything. And when you put into context growing up in India where this is a great field, not many kids get the opportunity to practice cricket with lush grass on the outfield. So Suresh Raina for me was because, and he's just had another birthday, happy birthday my friend, my little brother. The fact that he would throw himself around and not care about if he hurt himself, that was such a, for me, it reminded me of me as a fielder, as a fielder when I was playing. So I've always enjoyed Suresh Raina's fielding. You
also mentioned about Jadeja and Virat Kohli. A little bit thoughts on their fielding?
Well, I think Virat Kohli, he's a great athlete. He's a keen footballer. Every time you see him in the picture, he's always got his football shoes on and he's got his football at Indian cricket practice. So he's a player that moves really well. And that's important to be a fielder. You can have the best hands in the world if you can't get to the ball. And you think of Jadeja, his speed is just incredible. Not just his speed and getting there. He makes difficult chances look easy because he's got into a good position. Whereas for players who weren't as quick as him, they would have to be diving full length for the ball. So Jadeja has incredible speed across the ground. He has amazing accuracy. So I think from that point of view, you just have to take your hat off. And he is a player that can turn a game in the field as a fielder.
One last question. You played against India for a long time. What difference you see between the current crop of Indian cricket and the previous
Sure,
one?
I think in my generation there were 2 or 3 batters who were comfortable away and out of India, whereas now I think the amount of cricket that the players, the exposure they're getting against pace during the IPL, I think their batting depth is really, really strong. And the pace bowler, we would always, if India came to South Africa, we would prepare a green wicket because India were relying maybe on 1 seamer, maximum 2, and more on the spin options. Whereas now, if you prepare a green and sporty surface for Test cricket, India have the pace bowling to knock you over, and they have the batting to be able to kind of get past you. So I think as an all-round team, even their mobility and their athleticism, we certainly saw under Dhoni that he made a massive difference just with his power game. Between the wickets, he was phenomenal. Behind the stumps, he never made a mistake because of his fitness levels. And Virat Kohli took that to the next level, where he insisted the entire team had to pass fitness standards. So today we had at the ground here, it wasn't just about catching it, it was about moving to the ball. Because if you can't get to the ball quickly, you have to be an athlete. You need mobility, you need agility. And I think Virat Kohli has taken, although he's not the captain anymore, he took the Indian fielding to the next level. Players got left out of the side because they couldn't pass a fitness test. And you might say, well, you cricket players, what do you need a fitness test for? But it makes a massive difference in the agility and people's ability in the field. So that has changed. India now tick all the boxes. Before you could say we were 10 or 15 runs better in the field. Now that's no longer. It's now you have to be man for man, woman for woman. You have to be better than them in the field, in the bowling and the batting. Because on their day, they're going to clean you up.